Hello everybody and welcome to the debrief of the Legend of Grimrock 2 single character challenge. My name is Highwing and we're going to be covering a couple things as post-consequence of the LP being finished. Namely pickups, Easter eggs, mechanics I didn't discuss before, you know the drill. So as I mentioned before, the master key opens every lock. Every lock. So you can get a bunch of treasures that you ignored or didn't properly key manage or what have you. The Dew Tree branch is a mediocre focus. I don't usually use it ever. This, however, I mentioned a while back. This is good if you know how to get it early on. This is the Bone Blade. It is effectively the backbite dagger with the strength of the Moon Blade, but focused on strength. Really good for a casual playthrough, but for the sake of this challenge, it wasn't alright. Now for an interesting thing someone brought up. Oh shit, I didn't write the name, but somebody in the thread mentioned that there was the distinct possibility that Force Field, or the Jeweled Scepter of Ruling, can cause a platform for you to walk on, and I really actually wanted to test this out. So here we go. Turns out that's not the case. But here's an interesting thing, it doesn't have a ceiling. So it's basically four walls surrounding a single point, but there's no roof, so you could fall in and you could climb out, but you can't walk on it, which is unfortunate. Now, I had a number of people tell me about this experiment. I mentioned before, this is mainly a something awful thing. I mentioned that bear form can't dual wield, and I was wrong. Eldnar, Twem, George, and Derek both corrected me, all corrected me, that if you have the dual wield trait and have, you know, the actual weapons, which I'm gonna do now, you can bear dual wield. Now this is interesting because in dual wield form you ignore the properties of your weapon, so if you have the little side dagger you can still do damage. Now this ignores all damage ranges, and the damage range for a bear is really crazy, so if you go bear form and dual wield you can be completely psychotic. Also you need a haste potion for this. Just look at this go. I'm going berserk here, it's crazy. Pun fully intended across, what, every fucking game that did it? So if you really just want to rock the single character challenge, dual wield, bear form, speed potion, it's going to cost a lot of alchemy ingredients, but nothing's going to survive this. Watch this insanity. I would highly recommend, though, being ever so slightly careful, because even with bear form, critical hits, and other things, you still do a rough range of 30 to 120 damage, and that 120 I think requires a crit. And you also cannot backstab as a bear, which almost disappoints me. Now here's a puzzle mentioned in the thread by a bunch of people. I should probably take a look at this real quick, hang on a second. But this is a puzzle that you cannot do unless you have the ending and translate it, which is a bit psychotic. Also a little trivia here, you can dig as a bear, which is humorous to me. But yeah, Steak Eater in the thread mentioned the hypercube. I know of the puzzle, I never did it, and I've never attempted to do it because it requires you to know of the ending and know how to translate the text in the ending. But in that ending, it'll say the one that lied to you holds a secret, and then it'll give you code based on the stuff you gotta decipher. Now, I did the thing wrong initially. I missed a couple steps because I was reading this on a second monitor at the side of my eye. But you can find a guide for this. I'm not gonna spoil it for you because if you're gonna do this on your own, you have to do these specific steps. It's very, very specific. You have to turn several times. You can't just go to the point and dig 3 times. You have to do it in a specific means to get to it. But if you decipher the code, then you decipher the other code and do the proper dance. About here. And this is actually a really devious secret too, because you had to dig not once, but 3 times. You get a hypercube, a really rusted hypercube. Heavily oxidized. I'm assuming this thing has been here for quite a long time in comparison to the one that was jailed in the Tower Grimrock, and the other one that was in the treasure room. So I'm assuming At this point, multiple hypercubes were made. To what design, I don't know, but they exist. Now, I thought I thought this came with a potion, but when I looked at the footage, it didn't. So we end the LP on me throwing a potion. Now, on to my thoughts at the LP. First off, let's discuss the ending. I was really excited at the end of the quote-unquote final episode, but there are some caveats that I messed up, and a lot of people in the essay thread corrected me. Thank you guys. The guys that when you are a guardian of the island of Nex, you don't have access to the word, nor do you have the capacity. You are just a guardian. Somebody posted a really good idea that the spirits of creation thought the logic for them was, well, if this dude is really focused on surviving, maybe he'll stay here and just survive forever and protect and kill. And it's kind of interesting. It's a neat little thing of a guy that's so dedicated to surviving that he'll just survive here with the words and guard those. Just a little bit of correction. Now, onto an interesting meta theory that kind of devolves into why this update took a little longer than it should have. A lot of people postulate that it is basically... This whole experience has been basically a... What's the term I'm looking for? It's basically like a game of Dungeons and Dragons where you are the player character of a custom Dungeons and Dragons campaign, and after all the puzzles and events you go through, you are basically becoming the DM, which makes sense because alongside this game you have a dungeon creator. And I thought that was a sensible, you know, form of logic. It does make sense. You go through the game, you play the game, he hands you the key to all the puzzles on the island and the staff to kill everything on the island. And then you are now like, hey, I could try out the dungeon creator. This sounds like a good idea. So that meta theory makes a lot of sense to me. So I thought that was a cool discussion. So props to the essay thread for bringing that up. It's an interesting outside theory that's not part of the main story, but I feel like that was probably what the developers intended. And then a funny side effect of this, because of that and some outside parties, namely other guys in the Straw Hat know, because of this LP and those guys, I'm kind of exploring Dungeons and Dragons now, so I've begun to notice that this game takes a lot of ideas from the Dungeons and Dragons, like, mechanical mindset, and I thought that was really interesting. But then again, Dungeons and Dragons is basically the core logic of every RPG in existence, so that kind of makes sense to me. Yeah, a little bit of just a side topic there. The LP was fun. I had fun doing it. This was one of the few games where I could play it multiple times and I'm like, that was great. I love playing this game. This LP actually spawned from two different things. One, I actually did get a review copy of this game way back in the day and I did review it, but as the game came out, I saw discussion on a couple Chan forums, and one dude actually did this way before me, like on release. He had roughly a level, I want to say either level 18 or level 28 Rattling Farmer, and that was where the idea spawned from. I just saw that and I'm like, that's a cool idea, but I never thought anything of it. Fast forward to about roughly, I'd say 2 or 3 weeks before the LP started. I was actually, you know, sitting around with a couple of other guys, Killer MC, Future Friend, Voice of Dog, and Voice of Dog brought up that he was finishing up The Legend of Grimrock 2, and I kind of, you know, chatted a little bit with him, discussed his thoughts on the game, and then we were just talking that, and after I was done talking about it, like, I was just like, nobody's completed an LP of the game, so I figure I'd do it as well. Now, I say nobody's completed an LP for the game because not only have people told me about this, but I actually did watch Agent 355's mostly completed LP of the game. That's where a couple of terminology that I use in this LP came from, namely, I think at one point I used the term alpha damage, which is... yeah, it was alpha damage, which is basically alpha strike if you're a Street Fighter aficionado. And yeah, I really kind of wish he completed the LP just because A, he had interesting discussions with roguelikes and old RPGs in general, and B, he had better synergy. This was just, you know, a personal challenge for me. I wanted to see if I could do a single character challenge. But yeah, that's where this whole LP came from. And funnily enough, now we have names. Now we have Thornbrain and his cadre doing a traditional playthrough, which I have linked in the thread, by the way. I think I still need to update the OP, but yeah, now you have a traditional playthrough with the voice of dog, and, or not the voice of dog, Thornbrain and his crew, which is probably going to be a lot better. It's going to give you more of a actual focus instead of my survivalist bias. But yeah, as I mentioned before, this I'm surprised at how many people, you know, picked this back up, bought it on sale, and played it, which is good. This game kind of needed that, you know, push, because it never got that on release. So yeah, to those of you that bought the game, good job, guys. I'm glad you did. And okay, let's see. You know, I've been doing a lot of I've been taking a break because it was really hard to keep this schedule, not gonna lie, just because I never have a moment's peace. But I'm probably gonna do a Grimrock 1 2-run playthrough. I'm gonna ring in Iron Chitlin and hopefully Oozeworm. Basically, hopefully on both those two, because Iron Chitlin's a bit hard to get hold of since he's always on business, and Oozeworm's, you know, a sports guy, so it'll be hard to get him. But yeah, I'm gonna get into work doing a, I'm gonna do the Grimrock 1 2-run playthrough. It'll be in this thread, but the title will change, so I'll have to get a hold of someone to get that done. But yeah, keep it on this thread, the LP will continue. This is officially the Grimrock Mega Thread. I'll see y'all later.